back in the mid to late 60s, in the midst of a crisis, or perhaps what I determine is maybe one of the greatest social times of America and maybe of the planet, Gil Scott-Heron, a young Hamite brother, coined a phrase called "the revolution will not be televised." And Gil Scott-Heron was not a very well-known, recording artist like the Temptations or, a Sammy Davis Jr. or whoever else I can think of right now. The Shirelles or the Supremes or Marvin Gaye or Frank Sinatra or Bob Dylan, but he came up with this phrase saying in the midst of one of the greatest social and revolutionary times, there were so many revolutions going on in America at the time, he said that the revolution would not be televised. And you have to understand, when Gil Scott-Heron coined this phrase, there was no cable television. You either went to the movies or you watched the ABC, the CBS, or the NBC networks, and that was it. There was no Netflix, there was no HBO. There was none of that. If you can imagine a world, and there were no computers, there was no online services, it was just either the movies or the television. And Gil Scott-Heron, in a torrent of imagination, said that the revolution would not be televised. And what was so eminent about that, the 60s, was perhaps the most tumultuous time of revolution, and so many revolutions that were going on at the same time. Some of them were counter-revolutions to the major revolutions. I mean, you had the Civil Rights Revolution, not starting with, but as one most eminent, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. March on Washington, August 28, 1963. Only 250,000 people showed up, but it was a humongous television event. I mean, it caused people's eyes to bug out. You had that revolution going on. And then, of course, the 60s were a time that was plagued in America with riots. The riots in Detroit and the burnings of buildings, the shooting of police, shooting up by police, the riots of Los Angeles, the riots of New York City. And then, of course, you have the civil rights marches. All of these were events that were kind of moving along independent tracks during the 60s. And they were all considered to be revolutions. You had the Black Power Revolution, you had the Black Panthers, you had the civil rights, you had the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, and then of course you had the social sexual movement. You had Dr. Timothy Leary at the University of Berkeley in California, and the LSD movement, drugs. You had the hippies movement out in Haight-Ashbury, out in San Francisco, California. Then you had the women's movement, Bella Abzug and Shirley Chisholm, and then you had the musical movement. You had the punk rock movement, you had the acid rock movement, you had the folk rock movement. It was a tumultuous time. And then there was the Vietnam War and General Westmoreland and all that war being televised every evening at Walter Cronkite. 58,000 people died in Vietnam. It was a tumultuous time. I mean, anybody who survived the 60s is a survivor. And Gil Scott-Heron, in the middle of this, said the revolution will not be televised. It was just the antithesis of what was actually going on. The revolution was on television. But there was a deeper philosophical sense, I think, that most people, thought about Gil Scott-Heron's statement that the true revolution, what you see now being televised, General Westmoreland telling lies, he and Richard Nixon telling lies about Vietnam, or Lyndon Johnson telling lies about Vietnam. The civil rights movement, Birmingham, Bull Connor, George Wallace, Malcolm X, Rap Brown, Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, Dr. Timothy Leary, people dropping acid. I mean, you could walk through Central Park and see people actually making out. I mean, having actual stomped down sex, and some call it rough sex. I mean, right there in Central Park in midday. It was a tumultuous time. And there was a war, and the draft dodgers, young men running to Canada, and and not to avoid the draft. Donald Trump getting a bone spur deferment. No, he had no bone spur. It was just a tumultuous time, and all of it was on television. All of it was on, including civil rights. In fact, at one time when Dr. King's movement began to wane and people weren't writing about him anymore, talking about him anymore. And you can make your own judgment about this. Dr. King, put school children out in the streets of Birmingham. And Bull Connor sicked the dogs on him. And that caught the attention of the world again. And, Dr. King's movement got some more television steam. If they don't give you press, they can control you. They can control who you are. If they give you press, you can grow. If they don't give you some media press, you can be good as goody. But they think you're not going to go anywhere. So Gil Scott-Heron, right, in the midst of James Brown hot pants, well, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Or The Temptations, My Girl. Or Frank and Nancy Sinatra. I do something stupid by saying that I love you. Or Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stone. Or Sonny and Cher, I Got You, Babe. Gil Scott comes up with a rap that says the revolution will not be televised. It was massive. It caught my attention. I pulled over to the side of the road first time I heard it on the radio. What is this? The revolution will not be televised in the 1960s. Well, today I'm here to tell you that the tribulation will not be on the internet. It's not as good as Gil Scott-Heron. I'll give myself the truth about that. But the revolution was wholly dependent on television at that time. And all of the movements that we have seen heretofore have been wholly dependent upon the internet. Let me just give you a little bit of stats. I told you that nearly 2 million people now have been diagnosed with the coronavirus. And the worst is yet to come. Over 128,000 people have died globally with the coronavirus, and some 609,000 people here in America have been diagnosed, and some 26,000 people in America have died from the coronavirus. And no matter how you cut it or slice it, or whether you're a redneck or you're a blue state, they're probably going to be, at least by mid-July, early July, there are probably another 40,000 people that would die. And that would be right with some of the scales and demographics of data that has been put forth recently about how many people will actually die, because it was up to 240,000 at one point in time. They were right about that. They're just not going to count them. But the deaths that will be counted by the Johns Hopkins University medical statistical following of the coronavirus will rise probably by July. This is April 15th. You got May, June. You got 2.5 months, another 40,000 people are going to die. People started dying at the 1st of March here in America, right? I think they had 1 or 2 deaths around the 1st of March. We're 6 weeks in, and over 6 weeks now, when Tribulation's Trump said all this is going to go away, monkey see, monkey do, diamond and silk said it's going to be a miracle. Trump saying we all got it under control, that we're really mastering this, we know what we're doing. 6 weeks ago, he was saying that. In the intervening 6 weeks, 26,000 Americans have died. That's the numbers that have been counted. That's not the true number of those that have died in the ghetto or in the poor neighborhoods, or even in other neighborhoods, in wealthy neighborhoods, and even in redneck land. That's just the numbers that have been reported. It's not the accurate count, or prisons for that matter. So if you have, in a period of 6 weeks, you got 26,000 people dying. In the period of 10 weeks to 12 weeks, you're going to have another 40,000 people die from the coronavirus. And they still haven't come up with a vaccine for it as of yet. So you figure by the time the 4th of July celebration comes around, that the deaths are going to be in the 60,000. But what happened? People get jaded. I've noticed something about a lot of them, New Yorkers in particular, but Americans in general. If it's not them that died, or one of their immediate family members or associates, they don't really give a damn. You know, during the social revolution of the 60s, when people, and prior to that, when people died, you had some empathy for the dead, even though you may not have known them, but not now. Death is so common. And I think that one of the things that we need to do with our young people is, you know, they do so much killing on television with these Xbox games, and there's so much violence on television, murder and mayhem and killing, you know, as a sport, that people are alien to the idea of any type of empathy or condolences or sympathy for those that have died. So, but there's going to be another 40,000 that's going to die that will be counted. It'll probably be in America, probably between now and July, another 400,000 people that's going to die, but it's not going to be on the internet because that's where everything is at now. Even television is on the internet. Anybody got Fire Stick? It's an internet television. You know, you don't need no antenna. You don't need no damn rabbit ears. Remember them bad boys? The rabbit ears, and I got one better for you. Remember they used to put antennas on the top of the house? It looked like a space thing, right? It was a big tall pole. It had all kind of wires, tubing going out around. It had about 8 tubings going out, a big stall pole. You put it on the top of your house, you turn it around, you lean it, and you can get a television set. You're right, you remember. Some of y'all old enough to remember that. Crazy. You don't need that no more. Everything's on the internet now. Everything, including you. Your life is on the internet. Everything is on the internet. They've got this thing now. They're talking about trying to cure coronavirus by tracking where you go with your telephone. Yeah, they got these tracking systems, right? If you move across the street with your telephone, they know it. Now, they say they're not checking on who you're talking to, your girlfriend or your wife. You know, then I say they're not telling you but they say we know you're over there. And I suppose the inference is we can, if we want to, tap in and find out who you're talking to. Everything is on the internet except the tribulation. It will not be on the internet. This is a bit of a news blog we do looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.